The desert sun hung low over Santa Fe, casting long shadows across a sprawling $3.8 million home nestled in New Mexico's rugged embrace. Inside, a stillness had settled, a stillness broken on a fateful Wednesday in February 2025, when a neighbor's knock went unanswered too long. Emergency lights soon flickered against the adobe walls, and what they found inside turned a quiet evening into a haunting riddle. Gene Hackman, the 95-year-old titan of the silver screen, his wife Betsy Arakoa, 64, and one of their 3 dogs lay lifeless, each in a separate room. 2 other dogs whimpered, alive but bewildered, as if guarding a secret no one could yet unravel. The news rippled outward, a shockwave felt from Hollywood's hills to the Hackman family's doorsteps. And then, a voice emerged from the silence, Leslie Ann Hackman, Gene's youngest daughter, stepping into the dim light to speak. Leslie, now 58, sat in her California home the next day, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke to DailyMail.com. Her words carried the weight of grief, tempered by a daughter's resolve. "We're waiting," she said, her voice steady but soft, "waiting for the police to tell us what took them." The deaths of her father and stepmother, and that poor dog, remained a puzzle with no edges yet defined. She and her sister, Elizabeth Jean, 62, could only guess, their minds drifting to whispers of toxic fumes, a silent killer like carbon monoxide slipping through the walls. But guesses were all they had. No answers had come. Leslie paused, her thoughts rewinding to the man she'd known. "Dad was strong," she said. 95, sure, but he was in good shape. Pilates, yoga, he kept at it a few times a week. No big surgeries, no red flags. Betsy, too, had been a pillar, her care a lifeline for Gene. His death wasn't a total shock. He was 95 after all. But this wasn't how we pictured it. Distance had stretched between Leslie and her reclusive father in recent months. "We were close," she insisted, a flicker of warmth breaking through. "But I hadn't spoken to him or Betsy in a couple of months. Everything seemed fine then, normal, good." Living in California, she'd last seen him face to face a while back, his Santa Fe retreat a world apart. Gene and Betsy had built a life there, a 34-year marriage that began in 1991, a bond Leslie cherished. "They had a wonderful marriage," she said, her voice lifting. Betsy kept him going. She watched over him, cared for him so well. "I'm so grateful for that." Her passing, it hurts deep. Now, with both gone, Leslie faced a journey ahead. "Once the police give us something concrete, I'll head to New Mexico." We weren't ready for this, not to sift through their home, their lives. "There's work to do, but we'll get there." Across the family tree, another voice joined the chorus. Tim Hackman, Gene's nephew, 51, speaking from his own corner of the world. He'd heard the news on that same Wednesday night, a call from Leslie lighting up the dark. She was the one who kept in touch with the most, he told DailyMail.com, his tone heavy with the suddenness of it all. "I was sad, sure, but shocked too. Uncle Gene was old. Yeah, probably had some aches and pains he didn't broadcast, but nothing big, nothing we knew about." Tim's mother, Barbara, had been married to Gene's brother Richard, a stuntman who'd left this earth 11 years prior. The last time Tim laid eyes on his uncle was at Richard's funeral, a fleeting reunion under a California sun. He'd come out here when the weather warmed, Tim recalled, but mostly he stayed put in New Mexico. "Over a decade since I saw him last." Estranged? No, Tim wouldn't call it that. Gene's voice had faded from the family line, but Betsy's hadn't. "I chat with her now and then," he said, a faint smile in his words. "She'd update me. Oh, Gene's doing good. I'd tell her about my kids, my life. Our big tie was the military, Uncle Gene's Marine days, my own background. But that was the thread. Betsy was his rock. He made it to 95 because of her, I'd bet on it." With a 31-year age gap, the family had always assumed Gene would go first, Betsy steering the ship after. "We figured she'd handle the arrangements," Tim mused. "Pay respects, say goodbye, whatever she planned." Now, this changes everything. No clue what's next. One of the kids, Leslie, maybe, might step up. It's all so fresh. Rewind to a year ago, and Gene and Betsy had briefly emerged from their cocoon. For the first time in 2 decades, paparazzi caught them. Jean leaning on Betsy's arm, a frail but defiant figure, as they stepped into Papa's seafood kitchen in Santa Fe. Earlier that day, he'd savored a coffee and apple pie at a Speedway store, a simple pleasure in a quiet life. It was their first public sighting since the 2003 Golden Globes, where Jean clutched the Cecil B. DeMille Award, a crown on a career that needed no encore. He'd retired after 2004's Welcome to Mooseport, trading sets for solitude, penning novels with Daniel Lenihan, and savoring DVDs Betsy picked out. In a rare 2020 chat with Empire, he'd said, "We like simple stories, those little low-budget gems. Friday nights? Comedy marathons. Eddie Izzard's speed of thought? Amazing." It was a glimpse into a man content, a legend at peace. Jean's story had deeper roots, too. Before Betsy, there was Faye Maltese, a bank clerk he wed in 1956. 30 years and 3 children, Christopher Allen, now 65, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie, and before they parted in 1986. Then came Betsy, a new chapter that stretched to 34 years, a testament to love's endurance. Leslie saw it clear. She kept him alive. Now, with both gone, the family stood at a crossroads, the mystery of that Santa Fe house looming large. Carbon monoxide? Something else? The dogs, one dead, 2 alive, hinted at a tale untold. Rooms apart, lives extinguished, and no clear why. Police combed the scene, toxicology reports pending, as Leslie, Tim, and the rest waited, grieving, wondering, piecing together a legacy and a loss. This wasn't the script they'd imagined for Gene Hackman, the man who'd stormed screens in Bonnie and Clyde, The French Connection, Superman. A giant who'd stepped away, only to leave them with one last enigma. Leslie's voice, Tim's too, carried love and bewilderment, a daughter's pride, a nephew's quiet respect. They'd lost not just a father, an uncle, but a pair who'd woven a life of care and retreat. Soon, answers might come. Until then, the desert held its breath, and the Hackmans held on to each other, ready to face whatever lay ahead in New Mexico's dust.